week I got sick, Monday I was fine and went to work as normal. Sometime overnight, Monday night, I developed fever and chills. I woke up curled up in a ball with a comforter all wrapped around me. And then as I was going to bed Wednesday night, I noticed that my feet and my fingers were turning blue. So at that point, we went to the emergency room. So I was admitted to the emergency room, to the hospital, and eventually diagnosed with meningitis. I remember being here for about 2 days, and I went to bed on Sunday evening. When I woke up, I was in the ICU, and they were telling me that it was Wednesday. But I actually found it much after the fact to be very useful. If you're missing several days of memory, it's so confusing and unsettling, and have something to go back to and say, okay, this is what happened.
Yeah, I had never thought of doing that. Jackie, on the first day in the ICU, from OT, she said, okay, you should keep a ICU diary. You should write down, what's happening each day, who comes and, what they recommend and what's going on. So I said, okay, need something to do anyways. When Michelle had first been extubated and the sedation was taken off, she was fine. She had passed all the cognitive tests. I got the cards out just because there's not a lot to do when you're sitting in the ICU. And she's like, oh, these are easy. This is a breeze. She's like, this is kind of silly. These are, puzzles for little kids. And then unfortunately, later in the ICU stay, she actually had an episode of ICU delirium. And then during that day, the cards were actually kind of challenging.
I was convinced that I was on a medical TV show. I was an actor. I was the star of this show. And it was our break time. And I was not being allowed to take my break. There were several sets. The people on the other sets were taking their breaks. They had been allowed to go. And I was still here in this bed. They still had me hooked up to all of this stuff. And I was telling them they needed to unhook me because it was time for my break.
You became weak pretty quickly, and it was a shock to you when you needed two people to help you stand?
It was quite a shock. Yes, when it was time to stand, they had gotten me sitting up on the bed, sitting on the edge of the bed. And when I did stand, as you said, it was a shock that it took two people, and I didn't feel like my legs were supporting any of my weight.
And your physical therapy and occupational therapy assessments happened within 24 hours of you coming to the medical intensive care unit. So that was what life was like with relatively early, very early intervention.
She had prescribed exercises for me to do, and she took me out walking down the street, which was great. It was great to get outside. That was probably my favorite part. And for quite a while when I was home, I was still eating primarily purees because it was so much easier. I would just get exhausted if I tried to eat something solid. And I remember Ken saying he was getting tired just watching me try to eat. I went back to work 6 weeks after getting home. I'm fortunate that I have a desk job. If I had not, I would not have gone back to work so soon. During the last couple weeks before going back to work, I got very frustrated at home because anything that I would want to do at home, I was not able to do. But at work, I could sit at a desk at a computer for a few hours. That was really actually a very positive experience for me. First, because it did get me busy. It gave me something that I was able to do. And it forced me to walk more than I would have at home.